Hello
Fantastic.
and welcome back to our next video in this mini series that we're running. Thanks for joining us again today. Parul and I are very excited to share this next topic with you. Now, if you watched our last video in this series, we were talking about the filters of the mind and how important it is to understand what's actually going on in your mind because it determines how you react or how you respond to a situation. So, we want to tie that together today by talking about our childhood experiences and this unconscious conditioning that's happening. We talked in that last video about how majority of our identity is formed at a young age and how we take on these beliefs, values, the language that we hear when we're young, and talking about how you can start to flip these. And we want to focus predominantly today on fear because fear is one of the main drivers for most of us in what we do or what we don't do. So, Parul, if you'd like to take the lead on this and lead us into this topic, that would be fantastic.
Totally. Thank you for that, Beck. Thanks for setting us up so well for today's talk. And yes, I think fear has been one of my favorite topics in the last 12 months. And it's something that I've been diving head on into myself, just coming out of a really long relationship. I don't know, many people listening to this might not be aware of that. I was in a relationship for 13 years. And I had started to feel things shift inside me. And things were really coming to a head within me where I couldn't deny it anymore, that I had to walk away from this relationship to really make the most of my life. And I'm not going to dive into that any deeper today, but I wanted to say that that's where a lot of my fears started to surface, right? So I'd been in a comfortable relationship with someone and I was safe and loved and everything was fine on the outside. So to then think of a life by myself, being alone, something that I hadn't done in a long, long, long time. And just going against the norm of the society, that brought up a lot of fears for me. And it forced me to face those fears. But being on the other side of that transition now, being on my own for 3 years, having done a solo trip, really truly making and setting up a new life for myself by constantly challenging myself with new experiences, journaling on my fears, writing down what is it that I want to face and weed out of my life. I can truly I'm so passionate about this topic at the moment because I feel like I've seen a lot of value in this, and I've seen how much growth I have personally experienced by stretching myself out of that comfort zone. So I would love to start by saying, once again, that Beck and I are obsessed with unconscious conditioning and how we can start to pick things apart to really transform ourselves. So our fears, so there are two parts to our fears. One is that all of us collectively as human beings, we have fears that have been passed on to us through our ancestors. They're embedded in our DNA. They're a part of us because they help us survive. They help us survive in the wild, in the nature, and they basically help us stay alive. So if you were to think of your ancestors who would walk in tribes, live in communities, and they didn't have shelters and facilities and safety methods like we do today. So they were constantly looking out for threat from the wild, right? They were protecting themselves, their kids, and their community, which is why it was important for them to stay on the edge, and that fear protected them. Mm-hmm. So we are still carrying that fight or flight, that component of fear in our system, which is good because it keeps us safe. But the second component is that as our society has evolved, we've also, we've changed a lot of our habits, how we live, how we show up, how we talk, all of those things. So the second part of our fear is formed from the experiences that we have in our childhood, which go deep into our unconscious. And why they go deep into our unconscious is because once again, just going to repeat that fact that we covered in the last video, because when till the age of 7, we are largely operating in our unconscious realm as kids. So we're soaking in everything that we hear from our parents, caretakers, teachers, society, all of that. And fears like fear of rejection, fear of feeling unloved, fear of not being good enough, fear of money, fear of not doing enough. So all of these fears then become a part of our conditioning. Whether they are true for us or not, they still become a part of us. And so we grow into adults who are scared to speak their mind because maybe we were shut down as a baby, as a child, when we tried to speak our mind, when we tried to be who we genuinely are in our purest form. We wanted to have fun. We wanted to say the truth. We wanted to ask for something we desired. And for the lack of anything that our parents could not give us at that time or address at that time, or coming from their own filters, our teachers, people around us, they must have shut us down, right? So then we learned to react in a certain way, which was to suppress ourselves to feel loved and accepted by those around us. And hence this fear journey continues for the rest of our life. Yeah, and I can keep on going on and on about it, but I would love to give Beck the mic to add to this and hear what she has to say.
Thank you, Parul. I think, yeah, fantastic information there in explaining the difference between real fear, of our ancestral fear that's been passed down from us. There was a real need for that fear to help protect us. And it's not to say that we don't have real threats and real things to be fearful of today, but it has changed. Obviously, we can step outside of our home quite safely. We jump in the car and we're reasonably safe, assuming that we're driving well and that type of thing. But our body still reacts in that way because that is how our biology is made up. That is how our physiology is made up. And even though we have evolved over time, we still have that very primal fear response within us. So now a lot of what we perceive to be a threat to us is actually and the way that we react to it, that's that primal reaction kicking in. So we need to learn how to manage that, I guess. And it's within us all. There's not one client I've worked with, Parul, where we haven't gone back to address fear of some description, and it will look different for everyone. I know that I have had to work a lot on. I never thought I was a very fearful person until I started digging, and so many things have fallen into place that, like, the tiniest little things that I can trace back to a fear that's not even necessarily, doesn't even look like it's related to the thing that we're working on. And it's like, wow, it's quite incredible how you have that connection. So if you can, I know it sounds funny, it can be scary to address fear.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I know that it can be quite confronting when we work with a coach, or even when we sit down to do it ourselves, because it is built into us, I think, like you said, to stay comfortable, to avoid discomfort. And when we address these fears and we work on ourselves, we feel uncomfortable. We get that kind of like kind of feeling. But I can assure you, when you actually go for it and when you address these things that we're going to talk about shortly, you will see such a transformation in the way that you think, the way that you feel, the way that you respond. And I use the word respond rather than react, because I know that's a big thing for a lot of people. We react in a certain way, and what we want to learn to do is respond rather than react.
Yes, love that. Oh gosh, so true. Like golden nugget there. Yes, it is about responding than reacting. And when we are reacting, we're largely again in our unconscious. And I would just conclude this whole, like what you've just said, Beck, by saying that there's truly freedom on the other side of fear. Like when we're in our fears, when we're being governed by them, we're playing small. We're playing, we're just hiding, we're being suppressed. And the moment, it's like breaking free out of a shell, right? It's like the moment you choose to face your fears, yes, it's scary because fears keep us safe, right? So it's scary because it threatens our survival, it threatens love, acceptance, all of those things. But breaking through that is a real rush. It's a rush because it shows you your limits, it shows you your edges, and it shows you that things don't fall apart. It shows you that if something falls apart, something better walks in your life. And there's just so much magic on the other side of facing them. So what I would love to do now is that I would love to walk you all through our fear blueprint. So whatever we've said, I think it'll make more sense if I show you a little graphic of how this looks like inside us. And then after that, I'm going to show you exactly how to flip that fear blueprint. So this is our unconscious fear blueprint. And it starts right from the bottom where you see inner needs. So what's happening here is that as kids, when we are born, we are extremely innocent. We are completely dependent on our parents for our survival, for learning anything, for food, for attachment, all of that, right? Actually, as Dr. Gabor Mate says, we are the only mammal species which is completely vulnerable and dependent on our parents for so long, for like up to 7 to 10 years for our survival. So naturally, two of our main inner needs at that point are attachment and authenticity. Now, attachment is our survival. Attachment is the love. Attachment means that we are going to be fed by our parents. We'll be looked after. We won't be abused, and we will have a shelter. So that's our safety. That's our survival. And then there's authenticity, which is our true nature, like who we truly are as unique beings. And of course, all of us know that we are all unique in our own way. But the problem that's there in our society today is that we're all trying to be like everyone else. And that's where the disconnect is. That's where we get anxious. That's where we get stressed, because we have to betray who we truly are. Because somewhere in childhood, we learned that if we were truly being ourselves, we'll be shut down or we won't be loved. So this brings me to our second point on childhood experiences. So once again, I'm going to touch on this example of, let's say you're an innocent child, you're like 5 years old, you want to play, and you just want to keep playing because that's fun. That's all you want to do. You don't have the filters of working, routine, time management, all of those things. But then your parents have other things to do. So they end up with full good intent. They end up, shutting you down a few times for being yourself, being a child who wants to be creative, wants to play, wants to express his desire, maybe be a little naughty. So when that happens again and again, and this isn't just your parents, it can happen in your play school, it can happen with teachers, it can happen with other friends around you. And these experiences go all the way into our teenage years as well. So if you were bullied as a child in school, or if you had bad breakups, all of these things are going to impact how you show up as an adult. So then that means that because of some unfavorable childhood experiences, you learned feelings of neglect, blame, shame, guilt, because somewhere you were made to feel not good enough, or you were made to feel like you need to shut down who you truly are, because when you're truly being yourself, your parents are getting annoyed or someone isn't liking you. So then you started feeling unsafe and scared when you were being yourself.
I can see how the way that you're explaining this, and hopefully our audience here can see this, how this is tying in with the filters of the mind that we spoke about in the last video. So all of these things that are happening in your childhood, through your childhood experiences, these are now forming those memories. And if you remember, we talked quite extensively about the memory filter. And so what we're doing, today and the way that we're reacting or responding is based on these memories that we created when we were a child, and these become those learned behaviors, and we keep acting on these memories from when we were very, very young. So we continue to be this scared person, even if it's not, not necessarily 24/7, but then so many of the things that we do, whether it be in work or personal life, we are coming from a place of fear based on these experiences that we had as a child. And it's not just fear, as Parul said, it's up there on the screen. It's blame, shame, guilt, anger, sadness, etc. And these are all feelings that we actually make a decision. Sounds really strange, because why would you decide to hold on to these things? But we make a decision to hold on to this fear, blame, shame, guilt, etc. And it creates an imprint in our body. Okay. And then, so if we're carrying on with the fear example, that's when we feel unsafe and scared. And if we go back to those filters of the mind, if you remember the picture that we had on the screen, that then creates a behavior. So you can see that top step there, the behavior to reaffirm safety. All of this fear comes out in how we react. So it might stop us from doing things in our adult life. It might stop us from taking a chance or saying yes to that opportunity, because ultimately our mind wants to keep us safe. So we might say no in case I fail, no in case I get hurt. And this is where the important part of learning to flip this, which I know you'll go into in a moment, Parul, is so important. Because otherwise we're never going to take an opportunity, we're never going to take a risk, and therefore we never grow.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that, Beck. I just want to add a very specific example for this, right? Like a good one would be, let's say, if you're applying for a new job, you might feel that, you're not good enough for this because you don't know X, Y, Z. So you're going to keep playing small. You're not going to apply for that promotion. You're not going to ask for that pay rise, because you will be scared that if you apply for this, you won't be good enough. Or if you speak your mind about that promotion, you will be shut down. Or if you speak your truth in a relationship or with your partner, they may not love you back, or they may reject you. And so if you continue to play small in these situations, you continue to hide yourself and what you really want, you're basically suppressing more and more who you truly are. And the result of that suppression is resentment. It's all of these emotions then that then manifest as self-sabotage or diseases in your body. And again, these are some things that we can dive into some videos later, because self-sabotage and emotional suppression are like massive topics in themselves. But I hope that example clarifies how your fear and your unconscious blueprint is basically just keeping you away from these amazing opportunities and deeper connections in your life.
Yeah.
Okay, I am now just going to flip onto from here, go directly into our flipping the fear blueprint, which is very interesting. So now we know exactly what's stopping us, right? So let's have a look at how you can start to flip it. It's obviously not as easy as saying, face your fears, and leaving you with that sentence, right? Mm-hmm. So the big thing here is to start to first meet your own inner child needs. Now, your inner child is that wounded part of you which felt rejected, neglected, unloved, or suppressed when you were a baby, when you were a child, and when you were having these experiences. So what happens in life is that because we didn't quite get those positive experiences when we were young, we start to look for validation, love, and acceptance from people outside us, which is why we become people pleasers, which is why we become scared, which is why we start to play small. We're basically playing small because we don't want to upset other people outside us. Because if we upset them, now let's say if you speak your mind to your partner, you might be fearing rejection, which means you might fear that you will not be loved because they might push you back. They may not love you back for that truth that you want to speak. And hence you might end up lonely, or hence you might end up ruining the relationship. So that's how this fear is playing. But if you started to give yourself that validation, if you started to love yourself regardless, if you started to flip the language that you're talking to yourself in, knowing that your truth matters, your feelings matter, your desires matter, what you want and how you show up in life matters, then you are not going to look for that validation from other people. And when you're not outsourcing that power to someone else, you're basically bringing it back home and staying more in your power to then show up in your truth, face your fears and be brave, because you know that no matter what the outcome of facing your fear is, you've got your back. It's massive, massive, massive to understand that it's really important that you have to have your back before you depend on someone else to look after you, to protect you, to validate you. So it all starts with self-love. It all starts with meeting your own inner child needs. Second is start to get curious about your childhood experiences. Now, I'm sure a lot of you listening to this would have lived your life on autopilot, not really questioning why you do things the way you do them, who you really are, what's formed the beliefs, values, opinions, memories that you have, why you react in a certain way, or how can you start to change your reactions and yourself and evolve more consciously. So it's really important to start here. It's like, start right now. Question the childhood experiences that you had. What made you the person that you are today? What is that experience that happened where you must have felt anxious in childhood, or where you felt left out and you felt unaccepted by someone? And what was the result of that experience? Is that experience still impacting how you react in life? Is that experience still shaping how you make decisions? So instead of judging yourself as, oh, I'm just like this in this situation, I'm shy, I'm introverted, I don't like socializing, I won't be accepted, I'm not good on dates. Instead of having these judgments and this set of negative beliefs, start to get curious about yourself and notice how that curiosity then starts to break these preset beliefs that you have about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. There's some really great tips in there, Parul, in how to get started. And we are going to provide some of these questions in our workbook as well to really get you started. And I think this leads really nicely into the third point here, regularly finding safety outside your comfort zone. Because when you do start to ask these questions of yourself and perhaps revisit some of these experiences from your childhood, again, and we've said this before, it is going to get uncomfortable. You know, your natural instinct, that original biology within you is going to go, this is going to possibly hurt. This is going to be uncomfortable. Retreat, stay comfortable, stay safe. But as long as you're doing this, obviously, in a safe environment, and that's why, you know, what we do as coaches, we do work with people, but you can get the process started yourself. But it's really leaning into that discomfort and saying, okay, do you know what? When I revisit these, or when I really do look for those first times I felt this way, or where this fear might be coming from, I know that there's going to be that freedom on the other side. And like we always say, we not here to we don't want anybody to have grand delusions here that it's going to be a cakewalk and, it's going to happen like that. It is going to take time. It's not necessarily easy, but start with, as it said, finding safety outside your comfort zone. So start small. There's nothing wrong with starting small. Think about one of those things that scares you. Perhaps it is meeting new people, with some of the examples that Parul said. I'm shy, I'm introverted, I'm uncomfortable in social situations, I'm not good on dates. So what's something small that you can do to just step outside that comfort zone to begin with? Maybe you're not used to going to a crowded shop on your own. Maybe you could start with that. If it's, not loving going and meeting new people, you feel very shy and introverted, maybe start with a group hang or a group date or something like that. Just finding little things to push yourself outside your comfort zone. If it's about even exercising, I know some people are quite fearful about taking that leap to start exercising because they know that they're going to hurt themselves because of an injury, or they feel unsafe about riding a bike on their own. Start with riding around your block or up and down your driveway. Or if it's fear of injuring yourself, be sure you know what your limitations are, and then just start very small, like with a 1 kilo weight, rather than going straight for the 7 kilo weight or something like that. And then, sorry, did you want to add anything there, Parul?
No, so I was just going to say, like, I so agree with what you're saying. It's about starting small. It's not about just chucking yourself in the sea if you don't know how to swim, which is a fear that I'm going to face very soon. But it's really just about, stretching yourself a little bit. Like, think about it like, as an internal GPS, right? And when Beck said, this is what I was thinking, like, your internal GPS is going to tell you to retreat, retreat, retreat. Think of it as like that broken record. That's what's going to happen. But then you choose to still go to that other road on your Google Maps to see what's there. Let me just see. This doesn't look too bad. Let me just stretch a little bit. Let me just risk it a little bit. And the more you do these things, the more you'll keep expanding.
And that's it, isn't it? The first time is the hardest. The first time you get up and give a talk on something, the first time you go and create a video for people to watch, the first time, you probably don't remember this, but the first time you literally got on a bike to ride it, you were without training wheels, you were scared to fall off. And you quite possibly did fall off, but you kept doing it. The first time is the scariest time. Push through it. Do whatever you can do. Do whatever you need to do to push through it, because on the other side of that is that freedom. And this is where this expansive behaviors and adventure comes in. So continue to do it, and don't just keep playing small. Like we said, it's fine to start small, but don't stay there. Keep pushing yourself. Keep trying new things. If you don't know what the next step is, ask someone, ask for help, and start bringing that adventurous spirit out that we all have, okay, to different degrees, but really pushing forward. That's how you're going to grow, and that's how you are going to eliminate this fear.
Yeah, and you won't know what you're capable of unless you try. Like, yes, your body is just used to, your brain's just used to being the way you have been being throughout your life. But what if there's a completely new version of you? What if there's a completely new side of you? What if there's like a complete other version of incredible reality possible for you? So it is about not seeing this as a chore you have to do, but having fun with it. Have fun with life. Explore yourself, stretch yourself, put yourself out in different situations, meet new people, face your fears and see, like, explore your depth, explore yourself, basically, and start to shift your reality.
I think this is something that we hear a lot, isn't it, Parul, about I'm not ready. I don't feel confident to do that yet. Well, the reality is that we only become confident at something once we've done it. And this is a big misconception, I think, with motivation and confidence. We are sitting here waiting for the motivation to do something, okay? And we don't want to do something publicly until we're confident.
Yeah.
The reality is that motivation comes through action. Okay, so sitting here waiting for the motivation is a waste of your time, because motivation only comes when you start doing something. And you can only become confident at something when you do it over and over again. Okay, so this is something to remember, that if you're sitting at home waiting for the motivation to kick in, well, I'm sorry, but that's not how it works. And if you're waiting to launch a business, or socialize with a new group, or start learning a new language, or whatever it is, if you're waiting to do that until you feel more confident, then get started, because the way that you're going to feel that confidence is through doing it.
Yeah, confidence comes from doing. Yeah, exactly. That's the perfect way to wrap it up. I think I wouldn't add anything else to that. It is facing your fears, doing things, and not thinking that intellectually you will do things when intellectually you know more, because we can often fall into that trap. But confidence only comes from doing, and you will only learn from doing. So start now, start small, seek help if you need it, and tell us what you think about, or what your takeaway is from this video or from the whole series. And if you want us to cover anything else in the next video, yeah, we'd be more than happy to cover all of that for you.
Yeah. Thanks again for joining us today. Thanks, Parul. And we look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.